You know that since the beginning, since February, I was saying this is a big fat nothing burger virus.
Yep.
And this is all, it's like, look over there, virus, and social engineering and all that stuff. When what was really happening was power and control. I want to change gears just a bit, because I was reading this article this weekend. It's called, the name of the article was The Fallacious Argument, If Masks Don't Work, Then Why Do Surgeons Wear Them? And the author of that article is Dr. Jim Meehan from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who's one of the group of physicians who's filed a class action lawsuit against the state of Oklahoma about masks, and about the fact that that the masks don't work, they only harm people. And I actually had a whole conversation with him last night. He's going to come and do an Instagram Live with me because he wrote this thing. He's testifying in Connecticut this morning against masks. They're testifying. They're doing this whole thing from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in fact, one of the gals who was one of the writers of that lawsuit contacted me, and I'm going to have the opportunity tonight to be on a Zoom with 39,000 physicians about masks, about the COVID, about social distancing, and the depression, anxiety, and suicide that's causing many more deaths than this virus ever will, about educating them about what's coming down the pike on this vaccine. So suddenly, through the power of God, I think that God's hearing our prayers, man, and hearing all the work that you've done, and I've done, and Bobby's done, and Rashid, and those of us that just pound it out every day. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, every single day. I just keep saying it in the things that I write and the things that I do, and I know you do on the Highwire all the time. I just feel like all of us have our collective sledgehammers that we're just pounding away at this beast from all these different directions. And even though we're all in the same team and we're all heading in the same direction about freedom, medical freedom, freedom of choice, stopping censorship, stopping mandates, and all this other stuff, we're all standing. I just think of it as like a great big Trojan horse. It's like concrete, and we're all standing on different sides of this horse all the way around with our sledgehammers just pounding on it. And so the mask thing is really, really a big deal. And I decided, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago now, it seems like 2 years, this stuff seems like it's been going on forever, that I wanted to change directions, at least temporarily, and really put all my effort into stopping these mask mandates. Because I keep saying that the only thing that masks do is cause illness to the person who's wearing it. And more evidence is coming out about that. And when we were talking to Jim, when I was talking with Jim Meehan last night about that article that he wrote, and he sent me a treasure trove of all these articles that he's pulled from from peer-reviewed literature showing that masks don't work. They don't even do anything in a surgical suite. I mean, they could do surgery without them, and it really wouldn't matter. Know, and so it's this whole this visual thing that we have about these masks. And so because I said, if we can't get people to understand that the mask is separating us, it's social conditioning, it does nothing, it doesn't protect you, I can't wear it to protect you, and I can't wear it to protect me, it really does nothing. If we can't get people to understand that, then it's going to be really hard to get those people who are marching like sheep to line up to get the vaccine. So I know that you've talked a lot about the mask stuff too. So tell me what you guys, because you've talked to a lot of people on Highwire about the mask stuff.
Well, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I've gone both directions. At first I was against masks. To me, it's just a placeholder for the vaccinations. But then, I had several people inside and some really big sources and people close to me saying, Del, why are you fighting masks? People are fine with the masks. It's not a big deal. This isn't the hill to die on. And so I sort of let it go for a while and said, all right, I mean, there's a point to that. I don't like wearing it, but certainly this is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is going to be vaccination. But I would say for me, about 2-3 weeks ago, when Paul Offit and Tony Fauci started reporting that even when we have the vaccine, it's going to be such a dud, essentially, that you're still going to have to wear masks, I said, all right, that's it. Then you're going to have us wearing masks to the end of time, and I am over it. And so I'm reevaluating that position, and and to be honest, you're absolutely right. I mean, I won't put the thing on my kids, and I have had there's 4 children around my daughter who's 6 years old that have all gotten strep on their face, or a bacteria infection on their face. I haven't. You see that once every 10 years, maybe on one kid, and now all these kids are getting these infections from wearing the mask and rubbing the strep virus, into their bacteria in the face.
What I tell people, Del, and I think this is a great visual that people have to understand about masks. And when you read the medical literature, now you've got lawsuits, doctors filing lawsuits about the mask. We've got a mask lawsuit going on here in Ohio. We've got a lawsuit going on here about the entire fraud of everything. I keep telling people, the cloth mask, he says in his article, Jimmy Hand says in his article, he talks about masks in the surgical suite and how a surgeon, they scrub and then they put on a clean mask. And if it's a long surgery, that's more than an hour, they will break scrub, go out, re-scrub, and put on a clean mask because the wetness does nothing but collects the viruses and bacteria in their mouth. And I keep telling, I want people to get this visual because it's so true. And particularly the cloth mask, that those really tight black masks that you see everybody wearing all the time.
Yeah.
The cloth masks, with just from breathing on them, within less than 20 minutes, they start to have moisture. It's like spitting on your face all day long. And I want people to get that. It's like spitting on your face. I mean, would you spit on your hands and rub it on your face? Not in a million years. But you do it all day long with these masks. You're spitting on your face, and people don't change them. They don't wash them. They don't, even the surgical masks, they don't change them. You see them wear them in their pockets, stick it on the dashboard of their car, and they put all this stuff on their face. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that you are reevaluating that position, because to me, it's when you've got a mask, they tried to separate us between vaccinated and unvaccinated, but you could lie. You could say, oh, my kids are vaccinated when they're not.
Right.
But the mask is social conditioning and social separating on who's going to be obedient, which means you just do it because you're told to, or compliant, which means I don't believe in this stuff and I know it's bad, but I'm doing it anyways. And we're separating society into buckets of who's going to be obedient, who's going to obey, and who's not.
Well, what people don't realize about the mask when it comes in, first of all, 99% of the science around masks comes from the use of masks in hospitals. We don't have any decent, really robust science looking at regular people wearing masks in a population, walking through their lives. And even if they did that study, you had people that were wearing the masks in a trained way where they're not touching their face, where it's air sealed, walking to society, which is not what we're seeing from 99.9% of the population. But I've scrubbed into ORs. I've shot hundreds and hundreds of surgeries working on the doctor's television show at CBS. And, I've done the whole thing. I had to scrub in the gloves, the mask, and everything in order to be in the OR with a camera. I had to swab down my camera, make sure that it was all clean when I went in there. But people don't realize that really the mask in surgery is a tissue. What it is a tissue so that when the doctor's standing over that, the cavern that's being created in whatever surgery they're doing, they may drool. You even know when you're looking down that long and breathing and you're intense, your nose tends to run. It's just a tissue there to catch that mucus coming out of your face so that it doesn't drip into the body. It is not there to stop airflow or bacteria from going. And that's because you can't have the doctor touching their nose or rubbing their nose, which they would be doing. You can't have a tissue because as soon as their rubber gloves touch something like that, they'd be contaminated. So they put the tissue right around their face. This has never been designed to stop, little virons, tiny little particles. And that's made clear even in California during these fires. You see the reports. Your mask doesn't stop the smoke particles that are coming in the forest fire. If it can't stop a smoke particle, it is certainly not going to stop a viral particle, which is so much smaller. So all of those things are really obvious to me. And it's funny, I was at a bar. It was Lee's birthday this weekend, and so we went out Friday night with a bunch of people. Then there's this in Austin, they do a great thing with these outdoor farms that just have a distillery and they make barbecue. And so there was a kid, it was basically an outdoor bar, and he's got the mask on. I could tell he was really nervous. I said, "Sir, can you wear your mask?" I said, "Actually, no, I'm not going to wear a mask." And he looked freaked out. I said, "Look, I just want you to, I want you to think about one thing, because you're going to see a lot of people tonight." And I said, "Look at this line. Look how many people are touching their mask, okay? Now, do you see me touching my face? I'm not touching my face because there's nothing itching my face. I'm not wearing a mask. So I want you to think about, you're about 3 feet away from me. Everyone touching their mask right now in that line and in front of you all night long, they're getting whatever virus or collection of things you're trying to avoid on their hands. Now they're touching the wood. They're touching the check you just handed, the pen you just handed me. And that bacteria and, or viruses, whatever you're worried, is crawling across this little piece of wood between you and I right now. It's crawling up your computer. It's all over you. Are you more concerned about me breathing the air moving past the mask? You see the gaps in their mask? None of this is doing anything. If anything, the touching and placing it on the things that you're touching is putting you in more danger. I'm convinced when I look at the population and how they're wearing masks, I'd love to shoot. I keep trying to think of how I could tastefully shoot a commercial that essentially shows a bunch of, people walking towards a grocery store, and they all put on underwear as they walk into the store, and then they're grabbing the fruit and the vegetables or whatever, and then they leave the store and they take their underwear off and they hang it on the mirror over the car, and then they get out of the bank and they put their underwear back on, and then they take it off. I mean, if you watch people doing that all day, you wouldn't want to touch a single thing on this planet. And that's exactly what we're doing. People don't recognize that you are discarding the same, toxins from just the way you do in the other orifices of your body. These toxins are collecting. This is a pair of underwear. So when you're touching it, would you ever want to watch someone touch their underwear and then touch the doorknob or the grapefruit you're about to buy at the grocery store? No. So to me, and they knew this, right? Every single one of these scientists told us at the beginning of this pandemic, don't wear a mask. It's more likely to spread the illness than to stop it. Now, all of a sudden, the whole thing's changed because, as you and I know, this has nothing to do with health. This is about social conditioning and control of the masses.
Social engineering.
Yeah, that's it.
So Del, I'm so glad to hear you say that you're changing your position on that, because we've got it. I did an interview 2 weeks ago with John Mappin from Camelot TV, and he had interviewed someone who had said, if we could get the 51% of people to just stop wearing the mask for 2 days, it would all be over, all of it. Number one, the people who are so bought the Kool-Aid and into the fear would realize they're not going to die. And the second thing is that the powers that be would understand that the hypnotic trance has been broken. And that's also what this mask thing is. And that's what people who are going to be running to the vaccine, if they think that their life is going to change and get back to normal as soon as they're vaccinated, guess again. Yeah. That is just the beginning of the terror that's going to happen. So on some of your guests that you've had on Highwire talking about the vaccine, what sort of things have you heard? I mean, I did an interview last week with Rocco Galati, the attorney out of Canada.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Who's been suing the pants off of everybody. And he said some things to me that in that interview that I had no idea about. Like, for one thing, about that, the whole depopulation agenda is alive and well, and that they anticipate over the next 15 years 4 to 5 billion people, that's people on the planet being unemployed. So they have to corral them and get everybody into this social conditioning and get them under control and get them chipped with the hydrogel and all this other stuff, because they can't have 4 billion people running around trying to figure out how to revolt. And that was the thing and he said that they've spent the $21 trillion that they've spent so far in this. He said, let me put that in perspective for you. He said, that's the equivalent of $500,000 per hour since Christ walked on the planet.
Wow.
So for $500,000 per hour times 2,000 years is how much $21 trillion are. And when you think about all the money to be made from this vaccine and the tracking and the COVID-19 passes and all the stuff they're going to do with us in terms of the tracking and hiring people, it's many trillions of dollars more than that. So that was kind of a shocking revelation to me about the powers and about the control. From some of your guests that you've had on Highwire, share with all the thousands of people on here right now. Tell the people anything that you've heard about the upcoming of this vaccine that really kind of went, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, obviously from the very beginning, we have been really covering, we immediately looked into the history of this vaccine, the attempts in animal trials. I think the biggest wows are actually coming from the pro-vaccine side. Paul Offit and Peter Hotez talking about immune enhancement, discussing, how dangerous the adenovirus vaccine. That was something that came up last week. You've got Paul Offit admitting that, you had Jesse Gelsinger who died from an adenovirus approach to gene therapy back in the 90s, which was signed off on by, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, but anyway, just this idea that they know how dangerous these approaches are. I mean, I think that that's what's really fascinating about the vaccine. When they started admitting that the FDA had to change its philosophy and say, we'll accept a 50% effective vaccine, 50% effective. Our immune systems in the world right now are 99.74% effective at beating this virus. So why would we inject ourselves with a dangerous vaccine that killed animals in the animal trials in order to achieve a 50% effectiveness? And then you've got Paul Offit saying, well, it may not actually stop transmission, but it could reduce symptoms. Reduce symptoms? We're talking about an illness that you have to take a test in order to know you even have it. You know what I mean? So that's like zero symptoms. I mean, we've never heard more about asymptomatic in our entire lives all around the world. Nobody knows they have this virus. So you want to tell me how you reduce symptoms below zero? And then you look at Moderna, and 2/3 of the people are saying they're getting fever symptoms. They're getting sick. So the vaccine clearly worsened, your symptoms are worse because for most of us, 90% of us, you don't even know you have it. So to me, even more than the specialists that are coming out pointing out these things, it's what we're hearing from the vaccine makers, from the pro-vaxxers themselves, that I find really interesting. But Shukrit Bhakti came on to my show. Dr. Shukrit Bhakti, world-renowned virologist, scientist, epidemiologist out of Germany, who's been working to try and get Germany, and they've had a huge revolt from their scientific body in Germany against the government's lockdowns. But he said something that really was something I had not cued in on. What he said is we're all being told that somehow we are heartless because we don't care about that 1% that are on their deathbeds that are getting this cold virus. He referred to it as a cold virus. It is a cold virus, and they are passing away. He said, yet we do not talk about all of them. First of all, in America, hundreds of thousands of people are going to die this year, whether it's heart disease or cancer. 650,000 people die every year from heart disease in the United States of America. Those 650,000 people are dying all alone in hospitals. They're dying in nursing homes all alone. At the last moment in your life, one of the most precious moments, I think, is when we're born into this world and the people hold us as we're carried into this world, and as we're carried out of this world, those that stand around us and hold us. You want to talk about heartless? We are robbing this generation of people that are dying right now in hospitals this year of that last moment to be with their families, to pray with their families, to be hugged and held and kissed. They are dying the most lonely, horrific death there has ever been. That is truly heartless, and that's happening to millions and millions of people around the world. This virus is killing people that always die from viruses that are this weak, and that is simply the fact of the matter. And I think, when we look at how they're counting the numbers, this is a counting game, right? It's a hoax based on counting. We have always had people die of coronavirus that had COPD, heart disease, diabetes. We've always had people die of the flu. And when I see, New York Times or articles that say conspiracy theorists, point to the 6% of those that died without any comorbidities as though COVID only kills 6%, that's a conspiracy theory. Those other 94% matter too. Okay, fine, but is this a conspiracy theory? We have never counted infectious illnesses and deaths the way we have. Is it not true that most of the people in that comorbidity category would have been listed as complications from cancer, complications from heart disease, complications from COPD. What is the complication? Your body is so weak that you cannot fight a cold virus. That's what's happening. And so if we look back, Sherri, and started counting flu deaths over last year, and made everybody that had cancer, stage 4 cancer, or had a heart attack and found themselves in a hospital, and we said if they had the flu, they died of the flu, you would find out that flu kills 300 to 500,000 people a year. I'm sure of it. And so we're comparing, we're making false comparisons, and that is the lie of our time. That is the lie of this pandemic. And so I've had tons of scientists that come on and talk about it. I think that probably the most fascinating interview I did was with Dr. Friston, who's one of the leading brain authorities, brain scientists in the world. He took his brain mapping software that is said to be the most critical advancement in the investigation of the brain in our lifetime. And so Carl Friston was his name, and he took that same mapping software and said, look, I just started looking at brain cells as people, that the messaging, that the firing of the information in the brain that I've been tracking as the virus itself, and then the connection to other people. And so he said, I mapped the world like I mapped the brain. And he was one of the first ones that reported on our show, I am seeing that 60 to 80% of the population cannot get this virus. He said, when we look at it, we look at how it's spreading, we are seeing these giant pockets of people that are not getting infected. And he said there's several theories to why they're not getting infected, whether it's the distance, just a geographic setup of where they are in the world, but there must also be some form of cross-reactive immunity that exists, because the computer is clearly showing us in every country around the world, this model was showing that 60 to 80% cannot be infected. That, to me, was the biggest discovery of this entire thing. And to you and I, in many ways, it's not that shocking, to find out that only 20% are going to need to get this virus in order to reach immunity. In fact, this was an argument that happened just this week at one of the press conferences at the White House, where Scott Atlas was challenged, saying, they were saying, well, Dr. Redfield, the CDC, says that only 9% have been affected. And he said, look, there's cross-reactive T-cell immunity, there's cellular immunity, Th2 immunity, antibodies, which everyone is talking about, is only a tiny fraction of what the immunity actually represents. Tony Fauci got into it with Rand Paul, who brought up the same issue. And thank God, for you and I to watch Rand Paul's and Scott Atlas is now finally standing in front of cameras talking about what we always knew. But Rand Paul said there's clearly cross-reactive immunity. And Tony Fauci said, you find me a scientist basically that agrees that you only need 20% immunity. That's just not scientifically accurate. And I was thinking, what are you talking about? Every flu season, we know that it's about 20% of people that get the flu before we reach herd immunity, because of all the people that had the flu last year. And this, the coronavirus is just another coronavirus. If you had one last year, odds are you are protected this year. And so it's amazing to watch a Tony Fauci or the World Health Organization or Bill Gates try to fight the historical reference of literally all science since the dawn of man until last year, and say that none of that exists now. It's like they're trying to rewrite a new history of viral understanding and bacteria understanding. But it's not happening. And
writing a new history, that goes with that asymptomatic carrier concept that they came up with. It's like, where did that come from? And there's two things I want to address, make a comment about what you said. One is about people dying without their loved ones. My nurse practitioner in my office said this last week, and I thought it was so correct. I said, Autumn, write that down so I remember it. She said nursing homes, hospitals, and I would add veterinarian clinics are the concentration camps of this present day Holocaust.
Yeah.
Because people are there dying alone. People with Alzheimer's that are confused, they don't have any idea. The autistic kids that they're supposed to be wearing these masks, they don't have any idea. The nursing homes, hospitals that you can't even get an elective procedure without getting your DNA harvested in a COVID test that means nothing, and that cases that mean nothing. And now, these veterinarian clinics that you have to drop your animal off when they're sick, that if they keep them overnight or they're going to do some sort of procedure, the veterinarian's even going to just do an exam on them. You got to wait in your car, drop your animal off, your loved one that's, the external manifestation of you, like your children in many people's lives.
Yes.
And not be with them when they're sick or they're having a procedure or there's something wrong with them. So nursing homes, hospitals, veterinarian clinics, I'm calling you out, are the concentration camps of this present day Holocaust. And then I would say something sort of from a kind of a smart ass sort of perspective, but I think it's true. This virus, this SARS-CoV-2 virus, is absolutely the smartest virus that they've ever created or has ever happened. I mean, it can tell time. It knows that after 10 o'clock, before 10 o'clock,
Curfews.
no problem. You can't get sick, but after 10 o'clock, I'm coming after you. I'm coming to get you. It can tell heights. I mean, when you walk into a restaurant, you have to wear a mask because you're infectious. But when you're sitting down at the table, no problem. It goes right over your head. It doesn't bother you. It can tell distance. I mean, it comes out of your mouth and goes exactly 6 feet and drops to the floor. It can tell the length of how far it is. It's so smart. And I hope that people understand how ridiculous that is. And because that's what they're trying to make you believe. This virus, if you wear a mask, it protects people. It protects you and protects others. It only goes 6 feet. It tells time. It knows how high it is. I mean, you can walk into a restaurant, wear a mask, sit down at your table, not have to have it on. Yeah. On an airplane, when you're eating, it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
United Airlines.
Oh, wait, you're eating. Let's leave him alone.
Let's leave him alone. United Airlines and all these airlines. In fact, we were on a big phone call. It was me and Rocco and Tom Rentz and Rashid Buttar, Judy Mikovits, and me and Carrie Madej. And we were on a conference call the other day talking legal strategies. And I know that you've been involved with a lot of legal strategy things with Aaron Siri and with Bobby Kennedy and different people like that. Because, talking about legal strategies on how to get this whole thing to stop. Because honestly, it's the only way. When we start suing governors outside of their domain and outside of their capacity, that's really, really important. And so there's 3 big lawsuits going on in Ohio because we understand that all of this is fraud. All of it is fraud. Yeah. And now, we've been pounding away at it loud enough and broad enough and big enough over the last 7 months that I think that their story's starting to just crumble. Yeah. But yet somehow mainstream media, the people still get their news from CNN, are bought into this fear-based place. What would you say, because we're going to be winding up here on time, because, unlike Facebook, Instagram cuts you off in an hour. I mean, they just make you go dead. What would you say in terms of getting people out of their fear-based place and getting back into health and medical freedom? Because Del, everything you say is so inspiring. It's just so inspiring. When I've heard you at rallies and we've been friends and colleagues for, since you started here pretty much. I was one of your first guests or one of your early guests when you went to California. What would you say in ending up here? And thank you so much. And if you've got like a couple of minutes after we end here, can you call me back? Because I got a couple things I want to drop on your plate before we start our days. But what would you say in terms of inspiring people to get out of their fear-based place, to get active, to understand what's going on? What do you want to leave us with here for the day?
Well, I mean, the thing is you really need to start taking time away from your television set as much as possible. I think that if you want to find health, then you've got to stop watching television. Have you seen the meme that, the Amish aren't seeing any COVID-19 deaths? And they said, why? And the Amish say, because we don't have a television set. I mean, that's really what this is, it's sort of what this has turned into. People, one of the things that I try to get across, you're a doctor. I'm just a journalist. And so I can only come at this from the things that I know, both about media and the people that I interview. But the thing that I can bring to this is you have to understand that when you work in television, I wish these dogs were, sorry they're being so loud today.
That's okay.
When you work in television, you know for a fact that the entertainment, the programming that you're spending your life creating is really just there to to hold people's attention to what is actually a billboard. This is a billboard for the advertisers, and the entertainment is only there to keep people looking at the billboard. That's what we know for a fact when you work in television. That billboard now is 70% of it is owned by the pharmaceutical institutions. And so when you are watching that TV, you are being programmed by those commercials. They're using every technique. Hold on one second. Let me just put these dogs out. Come on, guys.
No problem. No problem. No problem. Oh, I get that same problem as he does sometimes. My little dog is, he's just gained some weight. Oh my gosh, he's gone from 10 pounds to 12 pounds. So I have a friend staying with me that feeds him all the time. But he's a little dog, but he sounds
this
really
never
loud.
happens. This never happens at my studio.
Of course. Yeah.
Anyway, I think about my own family. My parents didn't vaccinate me, but in many ways they are really buying into this world. They're caught up in it, and not to really out my family, but just to see that even natural health people, they think that they can overcome. They marched in the 60s for freedom of thought. They think they can overcome, the television set, the MSNBC and the CNN, and then, oh no, I'm on top of it. But everybody, what I'm trying to say is anybody that watches that long enough, you're being brainwashed. You cannot avoid it. You can't have the repetition of fear so constant that you can override it. We are not designed to override that. In the end, whatever you hear, repeated the most times is what you end up sort of taking into yourself. And that television is constantly telling you you're sick. It is constantly telling you cannot live on this planet without pharma. And so you can enjoy, and even in the programming now, even in the shows you're watching, funding is going into, this is the modern age of television. More and more advertisers are putting their products and product placement inside of the television show you're watching. I've been looking at this even when it comes to, television shows like, was the last Kiefer Sutherland show where he's like President of the United States, or Homeland, these shows that I watch. And one of the things I've noticed is they keep making the bad guy some internal journalist or somebody in America that uses language like, our founding fathers said and our constitutional rights are. That programming, these shows are making people, when they hear discussions about George Washington or the Constitution of the United States, that is a bad guy. That's how you know someone is dangerous to this country. That is the programming coming out of television. And this is brand new to me, Sherri, because, as many know, I'm sort of politically marooned now, having been a progressive liberal, but I worked in Hollywood. And when they would say liberal Hollywood, I was like, what are they talking about? Now I'm really starting to see it. They are programming us through constant affirmation that someone who believes in the Constitution of the United States of America is a bad person. They're a domestic terrorist even. That's how you know they're a domestic terrorist. They'll say things like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and First Amendment or Second Amendment. All of that is what that television is doing. And so if there's one message I can put forward, it's turn the TV off. Why don't you start talking? Why don't we get back to having conversations with each other? Why don't we get back to the true entertainment, the mind expansion that happens by putting ideas on the table and debating them with people that we love? We've got to get away from this idea that, the politically correctness, right? Don't bring up religion. Don't bring up God. Don't bring up politics. Don't bring up science and medicine at the table. That's just going to make for uncomfortable conversations. That's why we're in the position we are. That's why we're wearing masks and hating it. That's why we're watching ourselves being compromised in what we believe in, is because we stop speaking, we stop communicating, and we let the television control our society and the government and the industries that want to sell us products. They are the ones in control. We've got to get back to communicating. And I, even back before I'd really become politically marooned, I had a cousin that was very conservative. And one day I sat down with him and I said, look, we disagree on our politics, but let's put the politicians aside for the moment. I'm curious, what do you really think of war in the Middle East? He says, well, I think that it only makes the rich richer. I don't think it has anything to do with our oil consumption in America. I was like, I totally agree. I said, what do you think? And I just went through a list of all the things, like, what is it you care about? And And every once in a while, one of us will say, well, Biden or Obama is the reason. I said, no, let's take that out. Let's take who out of it. I just want to know what you actually believe. Should we be at wars in the Middle East? Should we have a forced vaccination? If we got back to those conversations, you would recognize that Americans all across this country, we agree on 90% of what's wrong in this country. What we're arguing about is who is the problem, who's causing it. And that's the news. That's where the news comes in. They're dividing us. They're making us point fingers at each other and at other people because they don't ever want us to sit down and actually have a conversation. Because when we do, we realize, wait a minute, we really are all in this together. We, the people, know what's right here. We are being distracted and made to yell and scream at each other instead of have conversations. That's the message I would really like to leave. We are not going to fix this if we stop talking to each other. We have got to get over that discomfort, start sparking up a conversation with everybody else with a mask. I mean, I get it. I'm at Whole Foods. I got to wear it. But you see, there's something we see in each other's eyes like, yeah, this is, and then, someone will say, yeah, it's bull crap. And I say, yeah, totally. Or Jimmy and I, a lot of times when we travel around, anywhere we cannot have it. We were in a hotel, back in I think it was Wichita, Kansas, and we got on the elevator. We weren't wearing masks. We refused to wear masks in the hotel, and the guy in the elevator looks at us and he tears his mask off. He's like, "Good, you're not wearing masks." He's like, I hate this stupid thing. And and Jimmy goes, "Freedom elevator," and the guy, he's an older guy. He's like, "Freedom elevator,"
That's awesome.
It was really awesome, and we've got to take those opportunities where we can. But we certainly have to have the conversation, even if it's through masks. Let's at least start declaring to the other people, this is ridiculous. And by the way, I can feel the air blowing past my eyeballs and out the sides of my mouth. And this mask, there's no way it's doing anything. The conversation needs to happen. We need to get back to the dinner table. We need to get back to the phone calls.
Amen.
We've got social media. We need to tell the truth in our blogs and in our posts to each other. Do not be afraid. Our founding fathers were not afraid to say the word freedom. They were not afraid to speak out against the British government, even when there were soldiers knocking down their doors and sleeping in their beds because they had that right. We have freedom because our founding fathers were not afraid to speak that word. We need to get back to speaking our truth and speaking our word. Remember the Declaration of Independence. Go look at how many people signed that. That's all it took to create the greatest nation in the world. Your voice matters. Only a few passionate people is what it's going to take to get us back on track and save our freedom, especially our health freedom. We're needed now. We were chose to be here now. Stop being depressed. Look at the energy. Look at the movement. Sherri, we've gone from 7 out of 10 people, I just saw a headline back on June 10th, it was like New York Times, 7 out of 10 people will get the COVID-19 vaccine when it's ready. Now, beginning of August, headline reads, 2/3 of America won't get. So that 7 out of 10 won't get the vaccine at the moment it's ready. That means people are waking up. Even behind those masks, wherever they are out there in this country, we are waking up. That's because we are talking more and more. Don't stop talking. Speak your truth. And continue to share pieces like this, right? Take this video between Sherri and I and share it with everyone you know. Take the Highwire episodes. We're breaking them down to little 5-minute segments too, if that's what you want to share. But that's something you can do. You're a newspaper reporter. You are helping get that. It's the Underground Railroad, right? Share it with everyone you know so that we can expand the understanding to the people that are glued in front of their television sets watching CNN and MSNBC. Maybe we can penetrate. We certainly are moving in the right direction. I'm very excited about that.
Woohoo! Yes! Yes. That was awesome. We're going to take that last little piece of what you just said. We're going to clip that out because I download these off of Instagram and we convert them and we actually multi-purpose all this content. So Del, just so we don't get cut off, I do want to talk to you for just a minute if you'll call me right back.
Okay, I'll call you right back.
Okay, but thank you everybody for being here this morning. And Del's right. This will be up on Instagram. It'll be over on disseminate.tv. We're going to share it everywhere in our email list. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk with all of us this morning and inspiring all of us in one more direction besides the amazing stuff that you do on Highwire. So thank you everybody for being here this morning. We love all of you. We pray for you. We thank you for supporting everything that we do. And until I see you at 6 o'clock tonight on Happy Hour with Dr. T, You guys have a really, really great day. Thank you so much, Del, and thanks for being with us. Thanks to everybody for being here. You guys have a great day.